if people of the cities, people of the various areas of the world were to have the right level of iman and the right level of taqwa, Allah says, I would have opened up to them the blessings, the barakat of the skies and the earth. Now this Quran is what gives us access to all of that. Our attention is always on the apparent asbab. If I make this kind of effort, I will get this kind of result. And yes, dunya is a place of asbab. There's no doubt about that. But I think we play the asbab card a little too much. We overrate the asbab. Everyone is saying, dunya is darul asbab, dunya is darul asbab, dunya is darul asbab. But you hear very few people saying, dunya is darul iman, and dunya is darul taqwa, and dunya is darul ihsan. This is also the place of building our iman and using our iman to access things from the treasures of Allah. Using taqwa, building our taqwa to access the treasures of Allah. Using the quality of ihsan to access the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is actually what dunya is for. Asbab are there as tools, as utensils to do certain things. But Allah has not created the world for asbab. Allah has not created the world for these asbab. He has created it for something much different. And we hear that Ramadan is a month of sabr. But we need to keep in mind that sabr is a multifaceted thing. Normally, we understand sabr to be patient in the face of some difficulty. So people are hungry and thirsty in Ramadan, so they endure it. Okay, we're doing sabr. But what we often leave out is that this is one aspect of sabr. This is not all of sabr. This is one component of sabr. There are two other, perhaps even more important components of sabr. The first aspect of sabr, and understand that sabr means self-restraint. This is the actual meaning of sabr. Habsun nafs, to restrain oneself. To what? And from what? So the first aspect of sabr is that a person restrains themselves to the obedience of Allah. Habsun nafsi ala ta'atillah. A person ties themselves to the obedience of Allah in such a way that they can't separate themselves from it. That requires you can say a level of stubbornness. That I don't care what happens, I'm not leaving that command of Allah. I don't care what happens, I'm not leaving that sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I'm just not. Do what you want. I'm just not going to. Now, it takes a certain level of self-restraint, self-control to be able to do that. It takes a great deal of strength. And sabr is actually a strength, it's a power that a person has inside. It takes a great deal of that strength to be able to do this. And not just do it once, but over and over and over and over again. This is sabr. They are withholding themselves by restricting their life to the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the ways of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And they're doing that consistently throughout their life. The second component of sabr is habsun nafsi an ma'asiyatillah, to restrain oneself from the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this is a test. This also takes a strength. Because when a person is tempted to do something wrong, the temptation surrounds him from all sides. And person is left feeling that I have no choice but to follow that temptation. There is no other way. To pull oneself out of that mindset, to extract oneself, in fact tear oneself away, and says to himself that no, I'm not. Now everything is pushing him towards that mistake, that error, that sin. The environment, for example, an environment is created where everyone is doing that thing. So a person feels compelled that I should just take part and no one's going to notice. And I'm just going with the flow. Sometimes it's some person that is working on them and compelling them, urging them. Sometimes it's just inner desires. And sometimes it's something else. But to pull oneself away, to tear oneself away from that temptation and say, no, I am going to keep myself away from it. Not just now, but over and over and over again. This takes a great deal of strength. So that strength that is used to keep oneself away from the disobedience of Allah Azza wa Jal, this is the second component of sabr. The Prophet ﷺ tells us about a man from Bani Israel by the name of Jurayj. And the story of Jurayj is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, that he was a great abid. He had dedicated himself to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he had built for himself a kind of monastery, a place where he secluded himself, kind of like a tower, and he just used to do ibadah. Now, one day as he was busy in his worship, in his salat, his mother called him from outside. Ya Jurayj. So he started thinking, should I break my salat and respond to my mother, or should I keep praying? So he started talking to himself, Ya Rabbi, ummi wa salati. Ya Allah, what do I do? My mother or my salat? But he decided to keep praying. So he continued to pray. The next day his mother came again and called him. Again he was busy in salat. Same dilemma. Ya Rabbi ummi wa salati. What should I do? So he again chose to keep praying. Third day, same thing happened. His mother called him, and he is faced with the same difficulty. Do I respond to my mother? Do I continue praying? He decided to keep praying. This time his mother got very upset, and she made dua against him. Now in this part of the story, there is a lesson for both, for children and for parents. The lesson for children is that if you are engaged in nafil ibadat and your parents are calling you, and it's something important, you should leave it. At least by the third day, he should have realized this is something very important. He should have left his salat at least on the third day. But he didn't. So, obedience to the parents is more important than nafil ibadat. That's the lesson for children. Now what did the mother do in her anger and frustration? She made this dua against him. Allahumma la tumithu hatta turiyahu wujuhal mumisat. Oh Allah, don't let him die until you show him the face of ill-charactered women. She said this, and in her anger she left. The lesson for the parents is never make dua against your children, because you don't know which one is going to be accepted, and many times children are destroyed, are ruined for no other reason but the dua of their parents. And parents have a great deal of love for their children, but often in that moment of anger and frustration, they say something, and that's it. It puts a seal on the fate of their child. And especially women should be very careful. The Prophet ﷺ says this, that this is one of the attributes of women, that they are prone to curse very quickly and very early in their state of anger and frustration. Khair. Now that dua took its effect, and people started plotting. And what was the plot? That this guy thinks he's so holy, he thinks he's so religious, he thinks he's too good for us, he's too good for everyone, and he just sits there in his little temple or monastery, and he's just doing worship all the time. So we want to take this person down. How do we do it? This man never comes out. This man never mixes with people. He never sins. He doesn't do anything. So they said, okay, one of them said, I have a solution. They hired a woman, an ill-charactered woman, to go and try to seduce him. So she went to that place and started calling him, and he paid no attention. This person was calling me from outside. She tried and tried and tried to get his attention. She did not succeed. Now in the meantime, the people of that locality had paid her to do this, and she somehow had to prove it to them that she had succeeded. So she went and fornicated with a shepherd. She committed haram with the shepherd, and she conceived a child. And she told everyone that I have succeeded in this mission and I am carrying his child. Now, the whole town went into an uproar. It was a big scandal. That this man, we thought he was so pious, we thought he was like this, and look what he turned out, and look, he took, an innocent girl from our area and he did this. And they went and they went and yelled at him, abused him. He did not respond to anything. He continued doing what he was doing until they came with their picks and axes and started hacking away at the structure he had built, and they tore it down. They actually demolished it. And that's when he had to come out. When the walls started coming down, then he had to come out, and he said, what are you people doing? They said that you have done this. He said, what are you talking about? With whom? He said, with that girl. And he said, I don't know her. I have not seen her. They said, no, we have the proof. What's the proof? Huh? She just had this child. Which child? This one. He said, bring the child to me. When he brought the child, when the child was brought to Jurayj, Jurayj went up to the child and poked him in the belly. And he said, "Oh child, who is your father?" Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the child the tongue. And the child said, "So and so the shepherd." And everyone heard. And they turned to the woman, "What is this?" She said, "Well, I tried, but he never responded, he never paid any attention to me, and you had hired me for this. I had to prove it somehow, so that's what I did." Now, everyone, first of all, this was a karamat of Jurayj. It was a miraculous thing that the boy spoke, and he was exonerated in an instant. And out of their regret and remorse, they said, "We want to apologize for what we've done. We want to reconstruct your monastery for you out of gold. We want to honor you by building it out of gold, to show the world that what a pure and pious man you actually are." He said, "No thanks. Just make it back the way it was." And that's it. This is what happens when a person adopts all three components of sabr. And if you look at it, what the other two components are, it's just another way of saying taqwa. It's just another way of having taqwa. That the obedience of Allah is there, abstaining from sins is there, and this problem has come, now I'm being patient. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about such people? He says, وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا لَا يَضُرُّكُمْ كَيْدُهُمْ شَيْئًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا يَعْمَلُونَ مُحِيطٌ. If you have sabr with taqwa, then no one's plot can harm you in the least. Allah has them surrounded. What happens with us if we only have the sabr of being patient when a problem comes, but we do not have the element of taqwa before that problem, during that problem, after that problem? Then two things. First of all, it's very likely that that problem is some form of punishment. It's some form of punishment, and just enduring it is not going to make it go away. Just enduring it is not going to go away, because this is a punishment, and a person endures punishment or doesn't endure it, the punishment is there to stay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to say to the people of Jahannam that isbiru aw la tasbiru sawa'un alaykum. Whether you endure this or you don't endure this, it makes no difference. You're going to stay there. Sawa'un alaykum ajazi'tum am sabartum. Whether you panic or you maintain your composure, it doesn't matter. You have done this to, you have actually done things to deserve this. So the Prophet ﷺ gives us the story of Jurayj to teach us this same lesson. When a person has taqwa and a problem comes, Allah Azza wa Jal intervenes and solves the problem for him. When a person does not have taqwa and the problem comes, they can be patient, but the problem does not go away and they're left to fend for themselves. So this is one example of this. And the Prophet ﷺ has given us many examples. Many examples of this. So fasting, look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about fasting. He says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyamu, kama kutiba alal ladhina min qablikum, la'allakum tattaqoon. Fasting has been prescribed for you like it was prescribed for the people before you, so that you acquire taqwa. And taqwa is what solves all the problems. Taqwa and sabr is the biggest thing, it's the biggest weapon that a person can have in this dunya. And without taqwa, a person is completely helpless. Then, basically, once the affliction falls, they have no choice but to be patient. They have no choice but to be patient. So, there have been many people like Jurayj. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum went through similar circumstances. Allah Azza wa Jal intervenes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and He defends. Inna Allaha yudafi'u 'anil ladina amanu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defends the people of Iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects the people of Iman. And it is through their taqwa that Allah does this. So when we become people of taqwa, when we acquire that level of taqwa that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, and through the examples that He has given to us, then all of those things come true for us as well. And may Allah Azza wa Jal, through this blessed month and these last hours of this month that are with us, may Allah Azza wa Jal give us this great gift of taqwa and enable us to spend the rest of our lives with this quality, and give us steadfastness in fulfilling His commandments, and also give us steadfastness in staying away from those things which displease Him. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.